Humans aren't just a rarity within the Netherworld, they are actual weapons. One human can shift the entire balance of power. They're basically Gojo. And decades before Iruma ever showed up, one was already there. The newest chapters take us straight into the past and drop an insane amount of lore. We're not just seeing random flashbacks either, we see the early days of big names like Henri, Sullivan, Calgo and his entire family. And most importantly, we witness the birth of Ameri's true identity. And I've actually figured out what happened to her mother, and it's a lot darker than you realise. But how did this all start? Well, first of all, I was right about one thing. When Iruma opened the Great Beyond Gate, the border control saw everything, and they are extremely suspicious. They're literally questioning if he's human. If Henri didn't vouch for him, Iruma probably would have been arrested on the spot. And honestly though, Henri isn't wrong, he's not coping. Iruma has achieved way too much. He's rank 5, respected by high-level demons, pulling off feats no human should be capable of, so border control isn't just panicking, they're being cautious because Iruma isn't just some ordinary human, he's a complete anomaly. And honestly, Nani was right to call him extremely dangerous, because he is. So all of these developments make it the perfect time for Henri to finally tell Ameri about his past, and about her mother. We flash back to when Henri first joined the border control, after graduating from Babylus. First of all, Sullivan looks dope when he was younger. The long hair is honestly such a vibe. He's clearly worried though, because just like Ameri later on, Henri was the type who held Babylus together as the brutal student council president. Without him, the students are way more likely to run wild. We even see a young opera who's absolutely adorable and had recently become Sullivan's butler, and unlike future opera, yeah, they're kind of useless. Breaking things, they can barely make tea properly, but it lines up with what we know now, and it's probably the same as what we saw in the Mafia spin-off. Sullivan likely saved opera from a horrible life, and that's why their loyalty runs so deep. Sullivan even suggests enrolling opera and Babylus, which we know does not end well for our boy Calgo. We even see Sabra's father too, and he's actually happy unlike what we saw in the past, or the future, I guess I should say, creating weapons proudly instead of being seemingly ashamed. It's honestly kind of sad knowing how Baal is manipulating him in the present. Then there's Raim trying to seduce Henri, and failing miserably of course. Rose seems borderline asexual at this point, so she's just losing her mind. But everything changes when Henri receives his first real assignment at the border control, and it changes his life forever. Because of his name Azazel and because of his top marks, he's treated as the top recruit and kinda has some nepotism, because that name does carry a load of weight, meaning that his name Azazel is definitely one of the big shots of the Netherworld, which makes sense. I mean, the bloodline is extremely powerful. But ignoring that for now, because of his name, he's able to receive one secret of the Netherworld. So what is it? Well, Henri is taken to a dimension completely isolated from the rest of the Netherworld, and inside he finds the first human ever discovered in the Netherworld. Kinda. There has been cases of humans being in this world, but this is the first time we've ever actually seen one in person. And this is the moment that Henri realizes that humans aren't some fairy tale, they're real. And then we get some absolutely insane lore about humans. Yes, we already know that they were considered a delicacy, but now we understand why. It's not just because they might taste nice. When demons eat humans, they gain an insane amount of power. Humans are like a potent drug, a forbidden sense of strength so extreme it could shift the entire balance of the demon world. But there's a catch. If a demon consumes a human, they lose their mind completely. Not just returning to origins, something even worse. Pure brutality, pure destruction. The power boost is so outrageous that if one demon consumed a human, no one would be able to stop them. So because of this, border control maintains the narrative that humans don't exist, which makes Henri's first official job clear. Monitor the human, study her, and make sure she never escapes. It also connects directly back to what Balaam said as well, that humans are like mythical creatures, explaining why he was so interested in studying. But here's the problem. No one can actually open the Great Beyond Gate, which as far as they know is the only way into the human world, because it's sealed. They have no idea when she can get sent back. Hell, they don't even know how she got here to begin with, so it could take decades. So Henri introduces himself. They can't communicate though, and Henri learns how useless humans are. They have no wings, no mana, and they're just physically weak. Which makes me wonder who initially started the rumour that humans are in fact fairy tales. Because although it's explained that it's so humans aren't obsessed with trying to eat one, It seems like it's more in place to protect humans more than demons, because realistically, no human is going to be able to do anything to the average demon, which could further lead into my theory that I've talked about before about Delkira's true origins, being from Earth. Anyway, this human is nothing special apart from their appetite, which is ridiculous, which obviously reminds me of our boy, but despite them having a clear language barrier, they actually start to form a bond, which makes border control uneasy. Humans are treated like animals, caged, contained, observed. You're not supposed to grow attached. I mean, it was specifically told to Henri to be careful. And yet, after only 15 days, Henri shows an expression that he's never shown before. He's already falling in love with her. So he does something insane. For the first time in his life, he breaks the rules. This might not seem like a big deal. Remember that the Azazel family, because we've seen it through Ameri and now through Henri in the present, they are extremely courteous of the rules. He decides to create a brand new spell that translates human language into demonic, and the only person he can go to is Sullivan. And he agrees. They are both breaking protocol for this. But this isn't as surprising for Sullivan, because the guy believes in growth above all else, in students evolving beyond just rules, which honestly reminds me of something Delkira would have said. They approach the Kame clan first, whose bloodline magic allows them to communicate and command creatures, as we saw with Kamui later on. Exposing blood magic secrets is a massive taboo for demons. Majority of clans would refuse immediately, but Sullivan's reputation is overwhelming. So Kame agrees without hesitation, but there is another reason. The Kame clan once rebelled against the Demon King, and now they exist purely to serve as repayment for that sin, and that's huge lore. Because as Sullivan said before, whatever the Demon King says goes. Disobeying him isn't just a betrayal of him, it's breaking the entire laws of the Netherworld itself. This is probably why Baal hated Delkira so much. He completely disagreed with everything he said, but had to just follow him because those are the rules. Anyway, they bring in a magic development specialist next, and then the Babylus history teacher, and begin running countless experiments. Whilst Raim notices something that's honestly hilarious to me. Henri's attractiveness stat skyrockets from 40% to 80%, it literally doubles, which is very similar to what happened with Clara. Love changes you, it makes you more honest, more confident, more yourself, and it would make sense that his attractiveness went up. But eventually, they finally figure out the spell. Henri doesn't even thank Sullivan, which is kind of a dick move, but I get it, because he's mainly focused on running straight to the human to test whether it actually succeeded. And it does. The moment he realises she can understand him, he can't hold himself back anymore. He tells her that he loves her, and judging from her reaction, she clearly feels the same way. Now this is where things get really interesting. Because Henri helped develop the spell, he's granted more access privileges. He's allowed inside her containment pod, and he's even given that same perfume Sullivan later gives Iruma to mask a human scent so demons aren't supposedly tempted. But that changes the implication completely, because it's actually in place to protect demons, but it doesn't really make much sense because we all know that humans don't have some supernatural ability to tempt demons. Henri fell in love naturally, so did Ameri. There wasn't some mystical pull or biological trigger, it was just feelings. And honestly, these chapters make it painfully obvious that Ameri and Iruma are true love. The parallels are way too strong. She even kind of resembles Iruma, but relax, okay? I was joking in my Discord about it, but they actually aren't related, alright? This is just Nishi visually mirroring the past and the future. I hope, anyway. Don't do what other anime do, please. But anyway, this raises a bigger question. What if the whole humans tempt demons narrative is a myth that was created to protect humans? If that's true, then Delkira may have suffered himself because of his identity and his genetics, which ties directly into the theories I've talked about before. But anyway, Henri is allowed 1 hour per visit, which is more than enough time, just saying. But even the head of the border control can already tell that Henri's way too far gone. He's completely in love. Then things take an even stranger turn. It turns out that this girl has no memories, no name, no age, no family, nothing. Her memories were completely wiped. She didn't even know that Henri was a demon, let alone that she was in the Netherworld. That's what makes Iruma such a unique case still. He didn't lose anything, he knew exactly who he was when he arrived, and he also didn't seemingly enter through the Great Beyond Gate like she did. And remember that gate only opens with Delkira's mana, as I've explained before. So either Sullivan has another method of reaching Earth, or Delkira gave him some of his mana before disappearing, and either could be true, so I'll be interested to hear what you guys think. Either way, she's shocked that this is what a demon looks like, mostly because Henri is just ridiculously attractive. I mean, who looks at this man and goes, yep, this is a terrifying Netherworld monster? And then when she touches him, he blushes immediately, completely flustered and totally unaware of the political nightmare that they are forming. charming, but she finally asks him something simple, to give her a name, and he chooses Merize. Yeah, this is full-on confirmation that she's Ameri's mother. I know we've been kind of avoiding saying her name, but let's be honest, you all already knew this. But if the parallels weren't obvious enough already, yeah. I'll admit it, alright? I was wrong. Ameri is part human. Leave me alone. We get further cute developments in the following chapter as well, almost like the calm before the storm. We see Henri wanting to get Merize a gift, asking Sabzan about what's the best idea, who is so blown away by the idea of Henri having a crush that he's borderline prepping for war. But obviously the better decision is to go to Raim, who's also blown away, whilst he has to keep Merize a secret for obvious reasons, and we even get this dope panel of the three of them. Anyway, thanks to them both, Henri gets a great idea to make something a lot more personal. A bouquet made of snacks, which again is something Iruma would love. Anyway, getting back to the more dark aspects, we're introduced to Calgo's father, Naberius Nightwalker, which is one of the most badass names I've ever heard in my life, and he's exactly as attractive as you'd expect. At this point, I'm convinced that's just the genetic requirement for this family, but honestly, he looks identical to Calgo. But unlike him, he immediately comes off as far more sinister. The moment he sees Henri and Merize, you can tell he's not thinking emotionally, he's calculating, and he sees an opportunity to use them for his own goals. And that's when things start getting dangerous. But what I can't stop thinking about is this. What actually happened to Merize? We know she's gone, and based on what Henri said, it seems like she just disappeared one day, and he's always depressed when thinking about it. That's probably why he didn't bring her up to Ameri, along with her being human, of course. But what if something much darker happens? What if she isn't alive? Think back to when Henri talked to Iruma about sending him back to Earth. He mentioned that the Border Control had done it before, but what if that wasn't just a throwaway line? What if that was his regret? What if he wanted to send Merize back but failed to protect her from demons who craved power? Remember that Iruma is an anomaly. Merize didn't have any sort of powers like he does. And this is where my theory gets darker. Look at Baal's creations. He's given demons powers that shouldn't even exist in the Netherworld, and they've become more unstable and more violent as a result. But what if that isn't random? What if he's using human DNA to create them? Maybe Henri believes Merize was safely sent back to Earth, but what if she wasn't? What if Baal has been using her this entire time to build his army? Because remember, we saw the likes of Aturi and Behemoth seemingly lose all inhibitions when they were given these extra powers that they weren't supposed to have. So what if this was the human blood that they'd eaten affecting them to their core? I know this all sounds insane and crazy that I'm kind of suggesting that Baal is using a human to create his army, but I wouldn't rule this out, and it could even explain why he's going after Iruma more, because then he could create more of them, and then he also has Delkira's mana. I mean, it's a 2-in-1 deal. Especially when we look at the latest chapter, as Naberius Nightwalker craves human blood more than anything, as it has unimaginable effects, which could explain my theory further. This also shows the grey side of the demon world. These guys are not good people. There's no such thing as just good and bad. It's a bit more complicated. But based on this, it is possible that Henri did exactly what he said. He protected her by wiping her memories in the process as he sent her back to Earth. But this doesn't necessarily mean that Baal isn't using her blood or another human as the demon's power source. Chances are that she's not going to be sent away quietly. What if she lost a bit of blood, not all of it, which Baal is now using? Which could explain why he wants Iruma so badly, not just because he has Delkira's mana, but also for his blood because he doesn't have an infinite amount. Remember that Narnia, who's clearly on Baal's side, was the one who brought up his identity. He wants the excuse to experiment on Iruma just like Nightwalker wanted with Merize. So either way, there are some really dark implications here. But let me know what you guys think, because if even half of this is true, the implications for Ameri, Henri, and even Iruma are massive. But if you guys want to check out the theory that I did make on Delkira, then I recommend checking out this video on screen and join my Discord for more comms like this.